What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel for another episode of the Ask Me Anything series. I apologize that this is a day late. As you all know, these usually come out on Mondays, but something came up yesterday. I wasn't able to record. Still a little bit busy today, so this may be a shorter episode than usual, but still wanted to get one out because, as always, you guys killed it with the questions. You guys have also been absolutely destroying the like goals that I've set as of late, which has definitely been helping the videos perform a lot better. So let's see if we can hit 1,000 likes on this episode. And as always, if this is your first time checking out the channel and you want NHL content just like this all year round, hit that subscribe button. And with that being said, let's go ahead and start this episode off with the first question from Jacob Burke 7, who says, thoughts on the Kyou situation? I've seen a lot of people making fun of him for getting emotional when the fans were booing, but I find the situation kind of heartbreaking in a way. Glad he got the ovation last night, and it seems like it's all in the past. I might be in the minority here, but wanted to know your take. Also, really appreciate the kind words, and I'm glad you liked the videos. My thoughts on the situation are similar to yours. I felt really bad for Kyou. I'm definitely not somebody that's going to make fun of him for getting emotional. I mean, just imagine being booed every time you touch the puck in front of your home crowd, your home fans that you've played in front of since, you know, he was, what, 18, 19, 20 years old? I still don't even really understand why the Blues fans were booing Jordan Kyou. I had no problems with his comments. For those of you that don't know, he was asked about his relationship with Craig Berube after Berube was fired, and Jordan Kyou just said, I've got no comment, he's not my coach anymore. Not really sure why those comments irritated the fan base so much as to where they went out there and booed him every time he touched the puck, but it is what it is. It's in the past. I'm glad he has since got an ovation and everything's kind of behind him now. But yeah, I definitely did not have any problems whatsoever with the comments that he made. I don't think they were disrespectful in any way. I kind of took it as just Jordan Kyou was wanting to, you know, put everything that has happened this season behind him and look forward. The next question we have comes from the Amazing Gamer, who says, can we talk about how Casey Mittelstadt is leading the Sabres in points ahead of guys like Dahlin, Thompson, Skinner, and Tuck? He finally broke out last year, and he's really taken his game up a notch this year. The Sabres definitely have to be really happy with the production that they've gotten from Casey Mittelstadt this season. 25 points in 32 games, which is actually now tied for the team lead with Dahlin. Mittelstadt's a guy who was such a highly touted prospect, an 8th overall draft pick in 2017. I remember heading into the 2018-19 season, everybody figured that the Calder Trophy race was going to be between Pettersson and Mittelstadt. As we know now, that wasn't the case, and Casey Mittelstadt got off to a pretty slow start to his NHL career, but like you've mentioned, he really took off last season and has taken another step this season. He's on pace for, I think, around 65 points. In terms of Casey Mittelstadt actually leading the Sabres in points, it's obviously nice to see, but at the same time, ideally, you want guys like Tuck, Thompson, and probably even Dylan Cousins you can throw in there, and Jeff Skinner producing at a lot higher of a rate than they're producing at right now, and, you know, being guys that are leading the Sabres offensive charge, but that hasn't been the case this season. Offense has been pretty hard to come by for the Sabres. Definitely a massive step back from last season, where the Sabres had one of the better offenses in the entire NHL. There's a lot of guys on that roster right now having a down year production-wise, but when you have bad seasons like this, it's easy to focus on all the bad and all the negative, but you do have to find positive things to look at, and Casey Mittelstadt taking another step in his production is definitely one of those positives for the Sabres this season. Moving along now, the next comment we have comes from James, who says, is it time for the Rangers to move on from Kakko? Guys like Brodzinski and even Edstrom in his one game looked so much more impactful. Where I'm at with the whole Capo Kakko thing, I wouldn't trade him if I were the Rangers just for the sake of trading him. That being said, they are one of those teams that I think everybody's expecting to be active at and leading up to the trade deadline, looking to add pieces to help for a playoff run. And if the right piece comes along and the team is interested in Capo Kakko and wants him as part of a potential trade return for, you know, whatever piece it may be the Rangers are looking to add, then I definitely think it's something that the Rangers should entertain if the right trade presents itself, if it makes sense. I don't think Capo Kakko is a write-off by any means. The guy's still just 22 years old, and he usually has pretty solid numbers away from the puck, has a good impact on the game defensively for the New York Rangers. But for a guy that you selected second overall, obviously you want a lot more out of him than him just being, you know, a bottom six shutdown forward. And when he's been in the lineup this season, that's kind of what he's been, because the offensive production just hasn't been there. The next question we have comes from Jindrik Pavelka. Hopefully I'm saying your name properly. I apologize if I butchered it, but the question is, since Kirill Vejmelka is on top top of the list of goalies, which will probably switch teams, where do you think you will end up and where do you think you would fit best? And also really appreciate the kind words, and I'm glad you enjoy the videos. The team that jumps into my mind first is obviously the Carolina Hurricanes, who have just been crippled by terrible goaltending this season. They recently placed Antti Raanta on waivers, called up a goaltender from the ECHL. We don't know when or if Frederik Andersen is even going to be back this season, so they're definitely a team that I think should be pretty active in the goaltending market. That being said, Kirill Vejmelka isn't one of those goaltenders that I think a team should go out there and, give up premium assets for. His career up until this point has been pretty up and down, had a rough first season, bounced back last year, finished with a goal saved above expected of 6.98. He's been pretty mediocre this season, obviously lost the starting role to Connor Ingram, who has just been on another level, so it's kind of hard to even gauge, where Vejmelka's value is at right now. But if the asking price is just a mid-round draft pick or a C-ish level prospect, then for a team with goaltending issues, I think it would be worth taking a shot on Vejmelka. At the very least, up until this point in his career, he showed that he's durable and is capable of carrying a heavy workload throughout a season. So we'll see what happens, but Vejmelka definitely somebody to keep an eye on. It is worth noting that it wouldn't just be a rental if he's traded for this season, as he is signed at a $2.725 million cap hit through next season. The next question we have comes from this Asian dude who says, would it be better for Fantilli to play for Canada in the World Juniors since he's not getting the minutes he needs to get comfortable and confident at the NHL level? For a second overall pick, Columbus aren't acting like he is. And also really appreciate the kind words, and I'm glad you enjoy the videos. I really wish Columbus did loan Adam Fantilli to Team Canada for the World Juniors. I mean, at this point, it's looking like the Blue Jackets season is a write-off, and man, I've been seeing a lot of outrage on social media amongst Blue Jackets fans because of the usage of young players like an Adam Fantilli, Marchenko, Voronkov, and Kent Johnson, all of which, Fantilli, Voronkov, and Johnson especially are not getting the ice time that they probably deserve. It would be different if the veterans were outplaying these young guys and Columbus was actually good, but neither of those things are the case. The Blue Jackets are not a good team, and a lot of the youngsters that I mentioned, despite the fact that they are playing a lot less than the veterans on this team, are outperforming the veterans for the most part. The Columbus Blue Jackets top 5 players right now in points per 60 minutes. Number 1, you have Dmitry Voronkov. Number 2, you have Kent Johnson. Number 3, you have Chinnikov. 4 is Marchenko, and 5 is Fantilli. I have absolutely no idea what the Blue Jackets are doing right now, what the plan is, what the direction is, but I can understand why so many Blue Jackets fans are incredibly frustrated with how the team has been managed this season. The next question we have comes from Mashtix Yank. Thank you for the pronunciation tip, because that would not have been good, but the question is, overall, how would you say Patrick Kane has looked on the wing so far, exceeding expectations you had for him, or just right? I know he's not Blackhawks prime Kane anymore, but these older past their prime stars that go to new teams to win a cup get criticized way too often, and also really appreciate the kind words. I'm glad you enjoyed the videos. I'm glad somebody asked this question. I actually made a tweet about this today. I'm not a fan of how the narrative is being put out there that the Red Wings are on this losing streak and, are 1-5-1 with Patrick Kane on the team, and it's because of Patrick Kane. Listen, I was actually pretty vocal before he signed in Detroit that I didn't think it really made a whole lot of sense for Detroit to sign Patrick Kane. Obviously, it happened. I went into it with an open mind, and I would say he has exceeded the expectations that I've had for him so far. Has Patrick Kane been great? No, by no means, but I think coming off of a hip resurfacing surgery, going to a new team, he's been just fine. I actually feel like Patrick Kane has been one of the Red Wings' more consistently dangerous forwards throughout this 7-game stretch, which isn't saying much because the entire team is playing really awful right now, but you also have to factor in that there's been just a slew of injuries since Kane has signed. He hasn't really had one consistent line that he's played on, and overall, the Red Wings season has really just gone downhill tremendously over these last 7 games, but it's really not because of Patrick Kane. I can assure you that. I've watched every game. I've watched every shift that Patrick Kane has played as a Red Wing. And again, I'm not saying he's been fantastic, but he is not the problem with why the team is bad right now. I feel like people are just so quick to write guys off, and it honestly seems like there's a lot of people on social media that are actively rooting for Patrick Kane to fail. So that's sort of where I stand on how Patrick Kane has looked with Detroit. I think he's been fine and has actually exceeded my expectations because I came into this with my expectations pretty low. And in terms of, the minutes he's been able to play, the situations he's been deployed in, I think he has overachieved so far. Moving along now to the next question. This one comes from ZBS the King, who says, thoughts on the Nashville Predators? Do you think they can be a legit team in the West, or do you think more so a first round exit? And also, really appreciate the support. I'm definitely not sold on them being a legit Stanley Cup contender coming out of the Western Conference. I wouldn't like their chances in a playoff series, against Colorado, Dallas, Vancouver, Vegas, LA. That being said, they are still in a much better position position right now than I thought they would be coming into the season. I didn't really have too high of expectations for Nashville at all. I don't think I predicted them to make the playoffs. I remember in the offseason kind of criticizing the free agent signings that they made in Nyquist and O'Reilly and Schenn because I thought it was time for them to, head in a much younger, sort of rebuilding direction. That's obviously not the case. That's not what they decided to do. And I mean, they're playing really well right now. They've won 4 straight after a really rough start to the season. UC Saros is all the way back. Forsberg's playing like a superstar. Yossi, the usual stuff from him. And guys like O'Reilly and Nyquist, offseason additions that I criticized, not because I thought the contracts were bad, just because I didn't think it made a whole lot of sense for Nashville. Those guys have proved to be some of the best pickups of the offseason. And now for the final question of this week's episode, this one comes from X Jensen, who says, what are your thoughts on Potra being assigned to Team Canada for the World Juniors? I really like the move. Obviously, as a Canadian and as somebody who's going to be rooting for Canada in the World Juniors, I'm happy about it because he makes them a much better team. And although, yes, he's been, a pretty important player this season for the Boston Bruins, they're a team that's good enough, that's deep enough as to where they're not going to miss him too much in these few weeks that he's going to miss playing in the World Juniors. And it's going to be a great experience for him. And you have to remember that Potra's a guy who didn't make the World Junior team last year. He's never played in one of these tournaments before. This was likely going to be his last year as to where it would even be an option for him to play. So I actually feel like Boston did right by Potra here, giving him this opportunity to go experience a World Junior tournament and be a key player for Team Canada. And like I mentioned, I think Boston's going to be just fine without him for a couple of weeks. So that is going to wrap up this week's episode of the Ask Me Anything series. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, you guys have been crushing the like goals lately. So if you guys enjoyed this video and you haven't already, please remember to go and hit that like button. We're going to try to hit 1,000 likes on this episode. As always, I want to give a huge thank you and shout out to every single one of you who took the time to come up with a question and leave it on the post. Even the ones that don't get featured in the video, just know I read every single one and I appreciate all of you guys. And lastly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want NHL content just like this all year round, hit that subscribe button and I'll talk to you all again soon.